Well, welcome. This is John Sarver from Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. This is the first Thursday. And so this is Ann Arbor Solar Stories. And I'm pinch hitting for Julie Roth, who usually hosts these sessions. First thing I'd like to do is to thank our sponsors. We have the State Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Homeland Solar, McNaught and McKay, Iron Ridge Racking, and Harvest Solar. And this is we usually have Zooms on Thursdays evenings. Sometimes we skip. Typically we have a Ann Arbor Solar Story the first Thursday, a more renewable energy seminar the second Thursday, which is hosted by Mark Clevey. And that's can cover any topic related to renewable energy. Then we have Detroit Solar Stories, third Thursday, and I kind of by Diane Van Buren as the host, and I'm the host for the fourth Thursday, where we may have solar stories from anywhere in Michigan. And, a lot of you I know are members of GLREA. If you're not a member, I encourage you to go to our website, www.glrea.org. And you'll find a way to kind of sign up. That's the best way you can support our advocacy and education efforts. This series is one of our education efforts. We do a lot of other types of programs, but also we're doing a lot of advocacy work at the state legislature and at the Michigan Public Service Commission. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Cliff Johnson, who's an Ann Arbor resident, and he installed his solar system back in fall of 2021, a 5 kilowatt system. And he's going to share with us his experiences with this system and kind of what he's learned. And so Cliff, go ahead.
Thanks so much, John. Well, welcome and thank you everybody for showing up. Again, my name's Cliff Johnson, and this is just an informal talk. I'm going to run through some things that Julie Roth suggested might be of interest to folks, and then when we're done, if you all have questions, we'll do Q&A, and which John tells me is the normal way of doing things. And so I'll just kick this off and start by saying that the title of my bit tonight is Micromanaging Solar for Fun and Profit, which, as you'll see, is appropriate for what we're going to talk about. So the first thing I'm going to say, and I will tell you right now, I don't know the level of experience or knowledge of the 40 plus of you out there, but in case there's anybody out there who doesn't have solar or doesn't know much about it, the good news is that you don't have to manage or micromanage it at all. It just works. So we had our system go green last fall, I mean, not this last fall of 21, and the power has been flowing ever since, if you allow for the vagaries of the weather and whatnot. So all you really need to do, if you just want to sit back and let the system go, is just watch your energy bills go down. However, if that's all you care about, then you might want to go watch some TV right now, because I'm going to talk about what happens when you decide to be a little bit more interactive. So I remember before we bought our Prius back in 2017, I read some article where they were talking about how the display, and you'll see that up on the screen here, felt to some drivers almost like a video game, like it's this challenge, and you get into the fun and the challenge of it. Ooh, let me see if I can get my eco rating up, and I plead guilty to that. I am definitely that guy. And so if you've ever driven a Prius, you know what I'm talking about. It rates you for your acceleration and your cruising, and the most bedeviling of all is the braking. The elusive 5 out of 5 for braking is hard to get. So I'm the sort of person who could just drive like I would any other car, but when I get in that Prius, I am usually motivated. Let me see how efficient I can be. Let's see if I can get every last erg out of that. How far can I go on pure battery power on my Prius? And I could tell you more about that, but this is not a Prius talk. So with that spirit and that attitude and approach, I approached our house when we went solar. And the first question I'm addressing here is why? Why would I do such a thing? Why would I bother myself thinking about it, acting on it? And I came up with 4 reasons. One of them is filthy lucre. You know, it just saves money, because while it's true my solar system does just work, it is more profitable for me, for my family, if we manage it. Because as I'm sure everybody or most of you here tonight know, DTE pays us roughly half what we pay them for every watt of energy. So when we sell back, because we've got excess energy, they pay us half a penny on the penny or 50 cents on the dollar. And I don't like that. So how can I minimize that? There is absolutely, and I think this has to trump it, because more than thrift is just the personal satisfaction. I love the feeling of, well, when I'm driving our new Pacifica plug-in, driving on sunlight, filling the metaphorical tank with sunbeams from my roof and driving that through town and with 0 emissions, that just makes me feel good. I like that. And so I apply that across the board to the way we run our household with the solar. I tell myself, and I don't know, I'm not an engineer, I tell myself that it's less efficient to send our excess solar out into the grid than it is to just use it ourselves. What kind of efficiency loss is there? Does it just go straight to our next door neighbor with minimal loss? I don't know how it works, but I'm trying to maximize our efficiency in that sense too. And I've also found, as a nice sort of fringe benefit, that being conscious of trying to get the most out of our solar system has brought to me a better consciousness of our efficiency with, you know, green living and energy efficiency across the board. So those are my whys. Then on to the hows. And I've divided this into 2 parts. The first one is about knowledge or information. They say knowledge is power. And for me, this really boils down to 3 things. Knowledge of the weather, what it is now, what it's likely to be, what I can know that I can expect based on past history. I'll get to that in a minute. Making use of our solar system's monitoring program. Now, we had our solar installed as part of the A20 Solarize program. We were a host family using neighborhood roofing. And when they set us up, we get our access to monitoring information through something called Solar Edge. It's a website. I'm imagining that other solar families in the area probably have some different website or app on their computer or on their phone or what have you. Ours is called Solar Edge, and you'll see some images coming up. This gives us all kinds of great information about what's happening today. And it can show us a year at a glance too. I can compare the fall of 21 to the fall of 22, or just today, by the month, by the year, by the day. And so that's giving me really good information. And then finally, you may or may not be aware that I can have on my iPhone here an app from DTE, and there's actually a little bit of hardware I had to send away from DTE to get that coordinates with this. It's called the DTE Insight, and it gives me invaluable, what I've found to be invaluable information about our energy usage throughout the day, and that's really nice because it's very detailed and it's real time. It gives you within a second or two information, as you'll see. So how does this information play out? Well, one of the basic ones is blue versus gray skies. It really makes a difference. As you can see on that graph on the right, this is from our monitoring system, the Solar Edge. This is from January of 23, this last month. And you can see the massive differences from a day like the 14th, where we had over 20 kilowatts total production for that day. Must have been a bluebird day or close to it, all the way to the 22nd and 23rd when it's 0. By the way, when you see those 0 days, I've never seen any clouds that could bring us that low. That's snow that's covered the solar panels, and I'm going to get to that later in the presentation too. So key information, and I will say especially this time of year, is what to expect. So I checked the weather, as you'll see in that little screenshot in the middle. This was the prediction for today as of Wednesday, the day before. So when I checked weather.com, I scroll ahead the hourly, I could say, ooh, good solar day. And then I say to my wife, okay, sweetie, it's time to do some laundry or charge the car. We did both, right? So this is a time to make hay while the sun shines. So I use the information about the weather in order to try to make informed decisions about when to have peak energy usage and when to ease back. Now, I said just a minute ago that there's a very big difference between like an overcast day, or if it's precipitating, and a sunny day. You could see those massive spikes. But that comes with a sort of caveat. If you look on the right, that was June of 22. On the left is January of 22. What's interesting to me, really fascinating, is the peak days, the days when there wasn't a cloud in the sky in January. The total electrical output from our solar panels, we have 16 panels, was almost the same as in the summer. Not quite, but it was very comparable. The big difference is the summer sun, I've found, has the power to penetrate cloud cover. You see those lower bars in June? Those were overcast days. But it still is a pretty impressive, looks like it's something like half of a blue sky day. In the winter, with that weak watery sunlight, it drops. You can see it drops way down there. And again, ignore those 0 days or close to 0 days, which that's the snow covering up the solar panels. So when I take an active role in managing our solar usage, I'm just basically thinking, is the sun shining or not? The key, what I found is the key, is if it's yellow, if that sunlight shows, if it's not that sort of, silvery gray kind of diffuse light, but if you can see some yellow to it, even if there's a veil of clouds, you're going to get most of your power. And again, in the summer, the output of a cloudy day versus in the winter, I estimate for our system, it's something like 6 times more. So big difference. Now, this is something that's peculiar to our house to a certain degree. Look at that graph on the right. It should be a nice smooth curve, and it isn't, and that's because when the leaves are in the trees, we lose solar in the first part of the day before about 12 or 12:15. And so you see that massive jump. It looks like El Capitan in Yosemite or Half Dome or something. That's because we're in shade, and shade, cloud, and snow cover. That's the enemy of your solar. And so as soon as the sun peaks over those treetops, boom, we're up to peak production. It's 12:15, 12:30, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and we're getting our full output there. One of the advantages for our particular situation is in the winter, well, the leaves are off the trees, so we actually get more morning sunlight. But then you also see that funny formation on the right, that little sort of jagged edge, I guess, that dog leg looking thing. And we also have a neighbor's house, which depending on the time of year, time of day, we get a little interference too. The shade comes in and we lose a little solar. Moral of the story, the ideal, if you have it, if you can get it, the ideal is completely unobstructed roof cover. That's what you want. We don't have that, but we've found that we still get a fantastic output from our system, even with the limitations of the neighbor's house and the treetops. Now, if you're going to do what we do and manage actively, you need information about not just your time of day and how much sunlight and what kind of output your solar panels have. You need to know about your own usage. Now, at first, what I did, I didn't have the Insight app. I just did things like I Googled, well, how much electricity does a dishwasher use? How much does a washing machine use, and so on. I have to tell you, the information I got from this DTE app was so much more accurate. The good news was our major appliances use about half of what they were predicted to use, which was great. And of course, you also see, well, that they don't use, let's say I have, let's say it takes 800 or 1,000 watts to run the dryer, but the whole cycle doesn't take that too. So that's something to know about. The beauty of that app, and there you can see an example of it, that's from my own cell phone there on the right, is it will show you if you flick the lights on, you'll see it jump by the amount of electricity. And I based that on a story. I was down here with my phone, right in this very room, but last year, and I'm looking at this, and there's something wrong. It was 100 or so watts more than I could account for. And then I looked at the track lighting in this room, and I flicked a switch, and it plummeted by like 120 watts or so, and realized, oh my God, I thought those were LED, but they weren't. They were incandescent. So I went in and swapped them all out. And that's just one of many examples of these happy accidents, where seeing in real time when somebody turns something on in the kitchen or something, I can see it. Wow, my microwave is 1,500 watts. How about that? This kind of information, if you want to be active the way we are, is just priceless. So what that comes down to is, of course, mainly big things like washer, dryer, dishwasher. The energy hogs of all are the 800-pound gorillas are the AC in the summer, of course. For our house, it uses over 3,000 watts. So we try to run that as much as we can just during peak solar production, and then plugging in our Pacifica. And I'm going to come back to the EV in a minute. But then it also gets all the way to every other appliance in the house. You know, some of them use more than you might think, like a vacuum cleaner. That's kind of an energy hog. Moral of the story, use this information to change our behavior. So as I said before, about 15 minutes ago, the idea is to make hay while the sun shines. When we have solar energy, and there's a difference between afternoon and morning versus that peak when we're getting maximum power, use energy accordingly. And the idea is to try to get as close to using all the solar as we can without being foolish and wasteful. On the right, you'll see a picture of our plug-in Pacifica. You see the two chargers, the white one and the black one? The white one is a level 2 charger. And you'll see the sort of the panel and hookup for that level 2. We had to have an electrician come in and put in the connection for that. That's really nice because that's our fast charger. And if you look at that panel with the red and the green and the little plus and minus, that's adjustable. And so I can tweak that up and down if I need to fast charge the car, but I don't want to be buying the electricity from DTE. I can just keep hitting that minus until I get down to that 0 level using my Insight app. The black one is just a standard, it's the charger the car came with. I had to buy the level 2 charger individually. The black one is just a standard 1,500. It's a 1,500 watt, so I can plug that in. This time of year on a sunny day, I can plug that in 10:30 in the morning, just leave it in all day and not even have to think about that. So if I know when, and it'll probably take 6-7 hours to fully charge the car. If I've got that kind of time, that's what I prefer to do. If I am more in a hurry, or if I feel like we're wasting a lot of that peak sun time. You know, I'm seeing it go into the yellow on my Insight app, and I hate the idea of selling that at half price back to DTE. I'll unplug the black one, plug in the white one, and away we go. Quick note on the EV. The Pacifica is a hybrid. It's a plug-in hybrid. It's got about a 36-mile all-electric range. I bought this months ago, and I'm still on the first tank of gas. We just don't, if we have to drive farther than 36 miles, we use the Prius. So it really is functionally an all-electric EV. And my wife pointed out an article she ran into a few weeks ago that was saying, you know, everybody talks about range anxiety and, oh gosh, does it have 400 miles, all electric? Most people don't need all that. They don't. And I'm living proof of this because we've been driving this for months. And where do I go? Well, I carpool my son to school, and I go to the grocery store, and I run errands. And it's all within a 36 or less miles range, and I don't need any more battery power than that. Eventually, we're going to replace the Prius with an EV. And when that day comes, that's going to actually really play into my whole strategy of trying to make hay while the sun shines. Because we could go 5 days in a row when it's all cloudy in the winter. Well, if you have a battery that's got 200-300 mile range, you can just sit around and wait for that sunny day before you plug in that fast charger and charge it up with peak energy. So that will give us a little bit more freedom and flexibility to really use every last erg of our own power. Yeah, as I said before, the enemy of solar is shade, which really blocks solar power more than you might think. If you're thinking about getting solar, absolutely have to evaluate that. Clouds, and I showed you how that works by the season, and then there's snow. And here's our video element for today, because that's me up on the ladder a couple days ago. And talk about micromanaging. I bought that roof rake the first winter we had the solar, and it happened because there was this day, beautiful blue sky day in December, and we were getting zero power, and it made me crazy. I couldn't stand the thought of all that going to waste.
Oh, good, because
And so I went out, I bought this. It was less than $100.
Yeah.
It's called Sno Pro, that, you know, this telescoping kind of rod.
So I want to show.
And you can see on that glass, it just comes right off.
Yeah.
Just keep going. Now, you don't have to do this. As you can see, it was starting to come off just with gravity and the sun beaming down on the roof. But I'm an impatient sort. I don't want to waste energy, so I get out on the ladder and do this from time to time. The little text to the right where it says Summer Solar Energy Guidelines, this is a document that I post on my fridge for my wife and son. And so in the summer, this is up there right next to the shopping list. And it gives the guidelines, and it tells my family, okay, gang, if you're going to use electric, this is when to do it, 12:15 to 5:15. Remember, we had that morning shade on our panels. And then I scratched in a revised version of that for the fall and winter, but that was too messy to show you folks, but you can imagine how that goes. And so part of this, I said knowledge is power, part of this is working with your team. In this case, it's my family. Looking ahead, and I say here in parentheses, based on the information we have so far, we seem to be on track to when we bought the system, what I rule of thumb kind of guesstimated was that the system would pay for itself in 10 years. Well, a year and a half-ish later, we're more or less on track for that. So after 10 years of owning this, it's going to be all profit. It will have fully paid itself off. So again, if you or anybody you know is on the fence, it's not really an expense, it's an investment. And it will, after you you pay off, and of course you get that nice federal benefit at tax time, then it's just money in your pocket for as long as the system lasts. And from what I can tell, they last a long time. So looking ahead, what are our hopes and goals? Well, as Julie said in one of the meetings I was with back when I joined the whole A20 thing as a host family, use less, lose less. And this is an ongoing process for us. We moved here in 21 and we did a big remodel. We did insulation, but we've still got a ways to go. So this is just an ongoing goal. And I will just say that I find that DTE Insight app is really helpful because it tells us, okay, well, geez, in the middle of the night, you got some electricity use going on. What's going on there? Hunt that down. Find out, do you have some kind of vampire device that's plugged in? As I said before, wanting to eventually someday replace the Prius with a full EV. And when that day comes, I'm going to enjoy having that big battery to play around with, as I said before. Down the line, eventually, the goal is 100% electrification. We have gas furnace and gas stove and gas water heater. And when that furnace and water heater die, we want to replace with electric. And I'm just kind of crossing my fingers and hoping that the technology keeps improving with things like heat pumps and that the price comes down. So that's our goal down the line. And the more we do that, the more electricity we'll need. And so I'm really crossing my fingers that we get the SEU. John, do I have that right? It's the Sustainable Energy Utility, isn't that right? Yeah. So A20, the city of Ann Arbor is exploring this possibility. I really hope they go with it because with the trees on our property, it's going to be really hard for us to get much more solar unless maybe we do ground mounting. We just don't have the right profile for it. So we're really hoping we can join the larger program, and above all, because of storage. When we bought our solar back in 21, I so wanted the home battery. I wanted it bad.
Okay.
But I didn't get it because I'm just not the early adopter type, and it felt like it was early adoption. It was very expensive, and I wasn't sure about lifetime, and it just seemed like the moment had not yet come. What I would love to do is to be able to handle storage through the Sustainable Energy Utility, so it's networked in a microgrid. But if we have to, I think someday we'll get something like a Tesla Powerwall or something, which will really help us even out those peaks and valleys. And that's our solar story, folks. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Cliff. That was very, very enlightening and helpful. And if you can stop the screen sharing.
Yeah.
I'd encourage everybody, because we've got about 44 on the Zoom, so I can't see everybody on my screen. But there's the button on the bottom, which is reactions, and if you click that, then you can raise your hand. So I see Carolyn's got the first question. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Oh, that was so great. We are just so like-minded. It's my family makes fun of me, but I'm just like you, Cliff, and we have the same we have a Prius and a Pacifica hybrid also. And I wanted to just I had one question and then just a few things that I thought could add that we've been doing. Our EV charger is the Emporia brand, and it has this setting. It's a level 2 charger, and it actually has a setting where you can hook it up so that it only uses excess solar. So it'll just top off at whatever wattage is exactly to the max that you're producing. And it also comes with, and the way to do that is you get this little monitor system where you hook up these little thingies on your panel, on your electric panel. And it shows you in really detail, which room, how much your TV is using, how much your washing machine's using, et cetera. And that's how basically 2 of them are hooked up to the solar panels, 2 of them are hooked up to the charger, and that's how it can tell. And then another suggestion, this is not so much about saving energy, but saving money, is the D1.2, the time of use rate. because I'm exactly like you. On sunny days, I try to do all my electric usage during the day. But on cloudy days, I do it the opposite. I try to do everything in the morning and at night when at least I'm paying 12 cents a
Right.
kilowatt hour instead of 16 or whatever. And then another thing that we've been doing that's really helped with that is a Nest learning thermostat. And it it's one of those smart thermostat things, but it can sense your whereabouts. So when you leave, it uses less heat when you're gone, sort of automatically. You just don't have to do as much because it learns your habits.
Right.
And it's easy to do settings like make it much colder at nighttime or whatever. And my question for you is about the sorry, I hope that wasn't too much.
Oh, no, that was great. Thank you. So I'm taking notes. I'm here.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
My question is about I'm just always so curious about the snow because our panels are covered in snow for many days and they're up on the second story roof.
Ooh.
So I think, we wouldn't be able to reach them anyway, but even if we had a tool, I'd be so worried about scratching. Like, I think I've read that sometimes the scratching can deflect the light and stuff.
I looked into that because I too was concerned about that. And so I really did my homework ahead of time and I made sure I got a product that would be okay with that. So I found it was within my comfort level, but I would certainly say if you're worried or concerned, just don't do it. Just wait for it to come off by
it'll
itself.
melt eventually.
Yeah. For me, it was more, I just couldn't stand the thought of all that electricity going to waste, when the snow was there. Yeah.
And Clifford, the name of the tool was Sno Pro?
Sno Pro is, I believe, just the name of the top. It's this, it's non-scratch. Car lots use it to clear off the snow off the windshields of their cars in the lot, right? So it's called Sno Pro. And then there are different, it will screw into a number of different attachments. And mine was telescoping. It goes out to like 30 feet.
Where did you get it? Where did you buy it?
I've got to look at that. I don't have that information in front of me. I remember I actually bought it from an outfit. I had to drive out of town towards, what is it? Beck Road off of 14, sort of that direction. So it was this little outfit they sell to, there was like, they sold various forms of equipment and so on. So I found it online and then they were the local, I didn't want to order it like on Amazon or something. I wanted it right away. So I actually drove to a local person. I wish I could be more help to you.
Cliff, I see in the chat, one of the early questions was, you didn't have to pay for the Insight app, did you?
So it comes, as I recall, 6 months for free. And then I think there is a small charge afterwards, but I found it quite reasonable because I use it all the time. So it's really easy, totally risk-free to try it for half a year and then see if you want to keep it. But the charge is so little that I just, it doesn't bother me at all.
It's been worth it for you. Yeah.
Totally worth it.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave. Dave Curtis.
Hi, Cliff. Thank you very much. It's been real enlightening because your whole system and your way of looking at it is very similar, like Carolyn said. In fact, without solar right now, I live by the same idea that I have consumers, but they have the same kind of summertime peak where you don't want to use any power. And so I live by that, turn everything off. So my question is, actually, I have two. How many people in your family? And is it possible that your Prius or your Pacifica battery could be used for that excess, like a Powerwall, a Generac, or
Right, I know what you're talking about. Well, yeah, there are three in the family. I've got a 15-year-old, and so it's my wife and I. So there are three of us in the household. And for a number of reasons, I think in general, we use a bit more electricity than maybe the average three-person. For example, this is a walkout I'm in. So there's a basement. It's built into a hill. And then we have another area, and we need dehumidifiers, or else you have problems with mildew, right? Well, each dehumidifier, that when it's running, that's 500 watts. So we use a little bit more, I think, than maybe for that in a number of reasons. And then on to your second point, a full-on EV, and not a hybrid, but a real EV. I've read a little bit about people exploring using it almost like an adjunct, like a Powerwall style thing. The battery on our van is not big enough. It's just, remember, it's like a tenth, something like an eighth or a tenth the capacity of, say, a Tesla. But in effect, by plugging it in only, or as much as I can, only when we have excess solar, it sort of, in effect, is a storage of excess solar. So it sort of does that job to us, at least for us, up to a point.
Sure. And your walkout sounds just like my house, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Dave.
Sandra, go ahead.
Yes, so we do pretty much all you were talking about, except I haven't known about that DTE Insight app yet. And you said there was some hardware involved with that. Can you explain?
Yeah, so it's a little unit about yay big, not much bigger than a cell phone, but a little thicker, right? And it plugs into our modem, which is, I'm pointing back because that's our utility room.
Okay.
So it just sort of, it's got like an Ethernet hookup to the modem, and then that provides the information so that when I log into my app, which I'm going to do right now,
I see.
right? Then, I'm logging in right now, and then it gives me real-time information. And if, like, I can hear my son in the kitchen upstairs, if he turns on the microwave, you're going to see it jump by 1,500 watts,
Okay.
Right, yeah, so that's what it looks like right now. And you can see the yellow shows where we had excess solar today, and then the green is when we're in the black, or in the red, rather, to DTE. So
you have to buy that from DTE?
yeah, and what I would say again, and echoing what I said before, order the 6-month free trial. It costs you nothing. And then if you don't use it, or if you feel like, oh, now I understand how much all my appliances use, send it back.
Okay.
I thought I was going to do that. I really didn't, but then I use it so much every day. I thought, no, I don't care. I'm gonna pay. And believe me, I hate paying DTE. Don't get me started on that cult. Never mind.
Thank you.
Breathe. Thanks so much for your question.
Maybe to the Insight thing, it's installed quite simply, and it actually uses the information from the meter, from the DTE meter. That's the meter already collecting anyways.
Yeah.
So it needs to be like kind of near where the meter can is, and it just kind of reads it from there with like a wireless kind of communication, and then just puts it on the on the app, on the cloud, for you to see instantaneously. If you're not interested in like that instant detail, you can get for free 15-minute increments of your usage just by logging into your account, and you get can even download the data in 15-minute increments only, and the Insight app just makes it in seconds.
But does that tell you what each appliance is using?
No, that would be what the other lady said, a more specific device that would be installed in your load center or breaker panel. Yeah. But you can kind of like rule it out by like trial and error. You can just watch it and like, oh, I'm going to turn the microwave on now, and then you see it flip. So it doesn't specifically call it out, but I think you can just deduce it quite easily.
I see. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's see, other questions or comments for our presenter? Okay.
Yes, I have couple of questions.
Go ahead.
First question I have is in terms of the specification of your solar arrays. Do you know what the efficiency of those are?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't. We have 16 panels. It's on the south-facing side of our garage roof. It's a 5 kilowatt system, so that's the most. And I bought it with an inverter, thinking that we might want to expand someday, so that could handle up to 7. But as far as the exact numbers you're asking for, I don't have that information.
Okay. I was just curious if you have the spectral response. You may not have that because you were talking about the different colors and how the output of the array vary with the color. And solar cells is my research area, and we work to develop multiple layers so we can capture the various colors. And that's the future of it.
Right.
The solar cells are up to about 40% efficiency.
Really?
And I worked on them when we were getting 7 and 8%, you know, so it's really advanced, and I'm confident it's going to go up more as well, you know. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've been pleasantly surprised by for me, in my relative ignorance, you know, of the unexpectedly high output in the winter. When I bought the system, I thought it might be close to 0, and it's been anything but. But I've been disappointed by it doesn't take much obstruction to make it drop off. Like if there's shadow on an 1/8 of the panel array, the whole array loses more than an 1/8 of its power, which has been a little frustrating for me, but it's just life.
Go ahead,
thanks.
Ken.
Thanks for your comments, and I would want you to know that I really enjoyed your presentation. I found it very interesting and useful.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for coming.
Ken, go ahead with your question.
So I'm a newbie. I'm just listening in. My goal is to, a couple things here is to go in for project management of these solar arrays, which I've got a little bit of background, hardly any. And so my answer for you, Clifford, is that the reason why you have less power on if it shades on one is it sounds like that array is all one long string. And utilities don't do it that way. They try not to. They use a long string, of course, but they don't put the whole array and all those things you see out there on one. They use optimizers so that in case one is shaded, the other ones are good. So just answer that. But I'm curious if this group would have a spec sheet for those persons who have put these things on their homes and what they started with and how they set it up. Because I like to look at that. I'm ever since I was a kid, when I was around 8 years old, and a company called Energy Conversion Devices in Troy, Michigan. The chief engineer used to live basically across from us. And I was curious back then. He had a LED watch, which I was like, and he said they had worked on things like batteries that you can discharge and recharge thousands of times. Imagine hearing that. Well, okay, now I'm 55. Imagine hearing that at that age. You're like, how could that be, right? And the velocity that Jim Woodyard spoke about, 40%, is that with using perovskite or just normal silicon? I'm curious. Or maybe you don't know.
I haven't done any studies to find out who's got what cells in their solar arrays, you know, which companies and whatever. But what I do know is that these 40% efficiencies are in arrays. They're available.
Yeah, I don't think they're in mass production yet, though. So I think that typically, if you're a homeowner and you're buying an array, the efficiencies are somewhere more in the 20s at this point in time. That doesn't mean, I think though Jim's comment is well taken because there is some potential there. And we're seeing it in different research projects that they're getting up to into the 40s. And so I think it's coming. It's just that I think if you talk to your solar installers, they're not readily available at least yet, but they're coming. Ken, did you have any other questions or?
One last question is, I've heard of bifacial arrays where you have the panels or the solar on one, you have them on both sides. And I've seen people in like, really sunny places using those. In Las Vegas, it's super sunny, so they probably get reflection. I'm not sure how effective that's going to be for here in Michigan. It might be. I don't know really. I'm just curious if we've heard of that. It's on the first time.
This is Jens. I think in actually their bifacials on a ground mount are quite beneficial, especially in snowy places, because you get like in the winter you have not so much sun, but then you get reflection of the snow, which is super good to get the back of it. So in particular, like in northern Canada, they'll put always bifacials up nowadays.
Okay, I have one last question. The question is, there's two kinds of panels. There's a polysilicon and then there's a monosilicon. And I don't know if that makes any difference. I don't know who's using what. I'm just curious.
Yeah, certainly makes a difference. The monos are again more efficient. Poly is a little bit cheaper. So if you have a big barn and you don't care about the looks, and you have lots of space, commercial farms will use that sometimes. If you want a nice, sleek, all black panel, you're gonna have to go with the mono panel. There's a bunch of good YouTubes. You can Google it, mono versus perk or something.
All right.
Or be quite detailed feedback.
Okay, go ahead, Vince. Vincent, go ahead with your question.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. Great job. I have two questions. One is what's a good efficient solar panel available, like currently available? And the other comment I have is we have a Prius Prime, which is a plug-in Prius that runs on gas and electricity. And there are some write-ups online about how you could use it as a backup power system for your house with a inverter. And you could, in an emergency, say you want to keep your refrigerator running or dehumidifiers running or whatever, you could technically have the plug-in hybrid or even a regular hybrid power your house. There's a story in New York Times about a guy who had a regular Prius, and during an ice storm, he had run his house for like 5-6 days. So like with you, our Prius, we hardly use any gasoline. We get about almost 30 miles on charge, and that's pretty much all the trips we ever take is 30 miles. Now, if we want to go on a trip, we only have one car, but we have the Prius that we can use the gas for a long trip. So we're saving, in a way, not buying a second car and the carbon emissions of a second car would bring. So in our mind, it's it's a little bit of a toss-up whether it's worth buying a second car that's all electric or having a Prius Prime. We get like almost 80 miles to the gallon.
Right.
But thanks for your comments and your suggestions. Any suggestions on a current solar panel that's very efficient and not too expensive? I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll defer that question to the more knowledgeable folks here.
Go ahead, Michael, with your question.
Sorry, I had to find the unmute button. So I have a couple comments and a couple questions. I have a ground mounted array, 48 panels, 20 kilowatts. And I, like you, am very anal about keeping the snow off it. And I have a plastic roof rake I bought at TSC on a 17-foot extendable handle. I can go out there, my gateway will say it's producing nothing. By the time I get out there and scrape it back, I'm making electricity, even if I don't get the ice off. So the ice just getting the snow off is a big help.
Yeah.
My concern is we don't have DTE, we don't have consumers, we have one of the small co-ops, and I get no information from them. The only way I can track what I put back on the grid is to look at my meter at the end of the day or the end of the month and figure it out that way. Does anyone know if there are any They're Chilicon inverters, if that makes a difference. Is there anything out there, aftermarket, whatever, that I can add on to keep track of that better? Does anyone know?
I got a question for you, Michael. You're talking about the power that you export to your utility, right?
Correct, yes.
It doesn't show up on your bill?
It does eventually, but yeah, I could look at it that way.
Okay.
But it does show.
Yeah, you want more detailed data.
Absolutely, yes, is what I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
Michael, I can offer you a suggestion. There's a company called Sense, that's SENSE. And they sell a solar, they sell a single clamp-on amp meter that you can put on your load center. And it's smart enough to watch the load profile, and it tries to guess for you which appliance started just now. Every now and then I get a note that says, I saw a new motor start. In other words, it saw a motor that it hadn't seen before. So that's a way to watch your loads. Then they sell a solar kit to go with that, so you can put the current clamps on your solar array and then put the other part on your load center, and it'll keep track of the stuff you use. The end of the month, it'll tell you how many minutes your furnace was running, providing it identified it correctly. So, and that you can buy for in the range of $350 to $500.
Hey, this is Caroline from the comment before. The Emporia monitor does that too. And I think it might be a little cheaper. You basically, it depends where you clamp, which circuits you clamp it on. But I have that in my Emporia monitor right now. It tells me, how much I took in from the grid, how much I sent out to the grid, which, is different from what I see on my Solar Edge, which just tells me all the amount I produced, not divided up between what I sent to the grid and what I used.
Thank you. That was a very nice presentation.
Yeah, and I have something else to add.
Sure, go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, so someone mentioned bifacial panels, and it's absolutely true that you can get more output, especially when there's snow on the ground. And the University of Wisconsin has some testing that they've done for several years with side-by-side panels, and they can show 15 to 20% improvement in the wintertime. But the thing that surprised me is that the bifacial panels are actually, there's a company in Michigan that's installing them like a fence where they stand straight up and down. And the morning sun shines on one side and the afternoon sun shines on the other side. I've seen those in Europe, but I didn't know there was anyone in Michigan actually trying to make a business of installing them that way. I put their name in the chat, but it's called Agathon Solar and Energy Storage. And I just heard about it last week, and I don't have any personal knowledge, but a reputable person told me that that is what they're going to specialize in, is vertical panels, and which means there's no headroom problems. You can drive through it. You can plant low watermelons anywhere you want. And it's pretty cool. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Lee. Let's see, we just got a few more minutes left. And hey, John Freeman, we do a lot of advocacy work, and we just had a case at the Public Service Commission from I&M. So I don't know, John, if you could just briefly kind of indicate what came out of the case.
Well, Indiana Michigan Power is in the extreme southwest portion of the state. They basically cover Benton Harbor and St. Joe. They have about 131,000 residential customers. And in 2016, a part of the new energy law update in Michigan requires all regulated utilities in Michigan to submit what's known as an integrated resource plan to the Public Service Commission, and then the commission has to approve it. And essentially, integrated resource plan is kind of like a blueprint on how the utility plans on generating the electricity they need for their customers over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. So it's really an opportunity for people like us to examine what the utilities plan on doing, and we can actually intervene in the case and challenge the utilities if we don't think their plan is particularly good in transitioning away from fossil fuels to renewable energy. So with I&M and DTE and consumers, the big push right now is to close down coal plants and to transition to renewable energy, primarily wind and solar. So Indiana Michigan Power, they've got a couple of remaining coal plants that they own, and they want to shut them down. And of course, they have to replace that amount of capacity with new sources of energy. And so they submitted a plan to the Public Service Commission, and the commission actually agreed to their proposal, where I&M agrees to add on 2,160 megawatts of new they call it carbon-free resources, which essentially is wind and solar. And so that's very, very good. And then the coal plant that they're trying to shut down early, it's called Rockport Unit 2. And that's about 750 megawatts of capacity. And so they're going to be closing that down soon and then replacing that with renewable energy and solar. So, so it was a plan that not all of us agreed to, because an integrated resource plan covers many, many things. But from the point of view of the Public Service Commission, the company was really showing, they were proving to be moving into a new direction in terms of shutting down the coal plant and opening up more wind and solar. So that's the primary reason why the commission approved their proposal. Now, you know, we will be able to monitor what they do. And if in fact they don't do what they say they're going to do, they're going to have to file an updated integrated resource plan no later than 5 years. But generally these utilities do it before 5 years. They do it almost every 3 years. So again, if they don't do what they say they're going to do, then the next time they file the plan, we can point out to the commission that you were fooled. You can't trust them. They didn't keep their word. And so we have to be much more vigilant about what they're going to agree to the next time around.
Okay, thank you, John. Well, we're at 8 o'clock, and so I'd like to thank Cliff for a very interesting presentation, and thanks to everybody for participating and for kind of sharing their information and experience, which I think is helpful. So again, I hope you can join us on future Thursdays, and thanks for coming. Take care.